its true nature is poorly understood by scholars, who have a difficult time identifying the extent of its borders. We know, for instance, that it drew power from control of important some to argue that its reach extended all the way into the region of modern Afghanistan. Yet the degree to which this control was exerted over the various local powers is disputed. However, it would be the rise of the succeeding Achaemenid Empire that can more conclusively be identified as the start of foreign control. According to our records, this was done through the several satrapies. As you can see, their approximate borders are quite different from our own. Each of these regions was governed by a satrap, who oversaw the various tribal communities that inhabited influence. New cities and fortresses were built to enforce control, taxes. While somewhat remote, these satrapies were still important to the Achaemenid Empire. They were hosts of land, controlled key trade routes, produced valuable goods like wine, and supplied to the royal. Bactria to the north was so important as a base of power that it was often ruled by the crown prince or heir, and was known as the land of 1,000 gold cities. I could go on and on about the overlooked history of this region, but that will have to wait for another video. Now, I think we definitely laid the groundwork for the main subject of the video: the invasion, withdrawal, of the army. So how did these Western armies end up in the area of modern Afghanistan in the first place? The short answer is that their invasion was a part of the in the 330s BC. This century east and west led to the Ionian Revolt and the eventual outbreak of the Great Persian Wars. This matter played a relatively minor role. However, when this northern to power in BC under Philip II and came to dominate Greece, it would take up the mandate of the world against the common enemy. When Philip was assassinated, however, his young decade, he would lead an army of around 40,000 to break up the empire. First in Anatolia, then the Levant, then Egypt. Victories brought glory, territory, and treasure beyond measure. However, not a the king of kings, Darius, had escaped his clutches and was remaining. This could not stand. He must be defeated once and for all. His army in pursuit of the leader without a throne. Along the way, he would resistance, establish garrisons, and build new cities to incorporate these lands into a growing domain. The victory would be denied him by Bessus, the satrap of Bactria. In the summer of mortally wounded and left by the side of the road. This enraged Alexander, who vowed to have the great brought to justice. You would have to wait for now, as more pressing matters were attended to. In the 30s, Alexander was once again ready to take up the fight against Bessus, who by this point would be raising a proclaiming himself the rightful successor of Darius. The Macedonian thus set through Parthia to the borders of Arabia, a satrapy that was roughly to the modern Iraq. Here, he established a small force before continuing onwards towards the objective. He would double back to deal with the revolt led by Barzanus, the satrap of Arabia. Additional revolt and against Alexander by fellow Macedonians further delayed the army's advance. Required by the king to put these down, and further campaigning saw the satrapies of Dragoon and Arachosia fall. Alexander now sought to approach Bactria from the south by crossing this mountain. Here's a map of Afghanistan to give you a sense of where the army marched. On the way, Alexander sought to secure his territorial acquisitions by which bore his name. Alexandria in Arachosia became Icandaria in Arabic, and become known as settlements populated with a mix of natives and thousands of demons and mass. This fact has always impressed me. Soldiers would suddenly be deposited at the ends of the earth and sound happened. For some, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start a they embraced. For many of them, they viewed these postings as punitive. Going down, Alexander was still by their side, campaigning when were completed. Along those lines, down on Bessus and Bactria, the foe retreated in a scorched earth. Undeterred, Alexander crossed at a lightning pace and managed to finally capture its target. To pacify the region, the Macedonians were deep in foreign territory and horrible. The rose up in revolt under the direction of further adding fuel to the fire by swarming across the border to take advantage. For nearly 2 years, Alexander would be bogged down in fighting, skirmishes, bushes, pitched battles, and dozens of sieges. In many west and Macedonian battle tactics had to evolve to meet the fierce face. One of the most cinematic of these engagements on the Sogdian Rock, thought to be impenetrable by itself. Send a picked force of 300 men with ropes and 10 pegs. 30, but the remainder managed to claim the heights. The miracle of their accomplishment immediately. This should give you a taste of the intensity of the nation, which saw tens of thousands perish, in which Macedonian people avoid death, once having his leg shot through with an arrow and but finally, in the summer of 327, the resistance of the regions that made up modern Afghanistan had come to the Middle East. Now, for yet further conquest in his forever wars, this time aimed to India. He would leave an occupation force of some 10,000 to 30,000 with boys that were making their way across the land. Control of these regions was left in the hands of with to deal with any further resistance that might arise. But in reality, we can only ever speculate what degree control. It's sure that a great deal of power remains of local tribes, whom the authorities had to negotiate for support. We hear these years that Alexander spent in India. How it seems that this was increasing. When news came of Alexander's near death against the Mongols, no post. News of his survival, though, restored some order, and the people were perhaps plagued his future when the king finally completed his campaigns and could deal with the internal issues of the realm. Actually, though, this would never come to pass, as Alexander died in June of 323 BC. We were told that was the straw that broke the camel's back. A revolt now pulling. Some simply packed their bags and left. Together, Turn is reported to have raised a force of some 20,000. On this occasion, we are left to imagine the situation on the surely it was a dangerous and chaotic time. Meanwhile, the rest of Alexander's empire was on the verge of fracturing. Who acted as regent while a series of backdoor deals held the whole thing together. To the other, he dispatched an army under Pathon to confront the settlers of the army. Apparently, Perdiccas was so afraid that the commander he sent would merely strike a deal with the rebels and force away south. He gave orders for the Macedonian soldiers to kill all the rebels. According their posts in Afghanistan were eventually defeated. They received pledges they could return. I'll now let him describe the situation that unfolded. Quote, oaths to the Greeks were interspersed among the Macedonians. Pathon was great. Bear with progressing according to his intentions. But the Macedonians, remembering the orders of having regard for the oaths that had been sworn, broke faith with the Greeks, setting upon them unexpectedly, catching them off fall down with javelins and seized their possessions as plunder. While I know many other brawls from have been quite chaotic, I can't recall one in which the allies, the occupying deliberately its own troops when they attempted to abandon their posts. At the same time, though, there are certain about whether or not this settler revolt should be considered a true withdrawal on ages. But semantics aside, this is as a situation. Still, the Hellenic world would not be done with Afghanistan. In the ensuing years, the rest of the empire ascended into the various kings fought for their share of the realm. Eventually, Seleucus gained control of the east, founding the Seleucid Empire in the process. He would send his colonists to assert control of the regions around modern Afghanistan. However, parts of these to the Mauryan Empire following a war in 305 BC. In the following century, the region was to be ruled by the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, the easternmost Hellenistic nation in antiquity. A fascinating piece of history that gets buried in the overall story of Afghanistan and is well worth we'll have another time. For now, we hope you found the story we've told to be an overlooked part of the past. A huge thanks to the researchers, writers, and artists who made this episode possible. Be sure to like content and check out these other related videos. See you in the next one.
From a geopolitical standpoint, the Eastern Roman was a sick man of the Middle Ages. However, amid constant there were periods when they pushed back against the invading tide. A string of capable, military-minded men would bring anti secure the long-time survival of the Empire. Welcome to our new series on the insurgent Rome, where we will cover the territorial gains of the Empire. In this episode, we will cover the origins of the Macedonian Nicephorus Phocas, the pale death of the Saracens. And if you are about you have the sponsor of this video and our most loyal partner, Magellan TV, the form of kings and generals, and we hope that our viewers love it too. Magellan TV documentary stream run by that has over 3,000 documentaries, among them hundreds of historical documentaries. If you want history, check out History of Rome, hosted by Monty Python's Terry Jones, who wants done for a humorous fashion. We also recommend the 6-part documentary series called Caesar, the Fall of the Empire. You can watch both anytime, anywhere, on your top or it's compatible with most devices. Our viewers can now take advantage of an exclusive offer, 30% off membership. It gives you a year for less than $3.50 a month. Every documentary we've watched has double that, and there are now 3,000 in the Magellan TV collection. Simply click on the link in the description to claim your discounted annual our channel and do that at try.magellantv.com/kingsgeneral. Free day. In the year 800 AD, Eastern Roman Empire former self. 3 centuries earlier, the grand ambitions of Emperor Justinian created a Mediterranean juggernaut worthy of being spoken of in breath for Trajan. Now, little of Justinian's legacy remained. Long to the very fringes of Italy, constant Slav along the Danube had put an immense strain on the empire's Balkan territory, and even the rise of a natal Islamic faith had permanently the Romans North Africa. Perhaps the greatest threat to the emperor's Muslim Arabs, who, in a stark departure from their deadly roots, to become the most deadly sailors of the Mediterranean coast. In suffered 2 major losses to 2 different factions of Muslim forces. They struck at Sicily, beginning the 80-year-long conquest of political exiles from Islamic Al-Andalus, seized the newly founded Islamic Emirate of Crete, became a menace to the mighty navy of the massive Abbasid Caliphate, became a which launched constant and devastating raids into the coastal towns. Byzantium in the early 9th century looked to be a polity line, and yet all was not lost. In 811, was born in Cariopolis, in what was then the Macedonia. Basil was employed as a stable boy by a distant relative of there he attracted the attention of important courtiers by his ability to kill the wildest horses. Basil soon became confidant. In 866, he achieved the role of co-emperor. A year later, Basil had Michael assassinated to ascend as the Basileus, founding the Macedonian that would year. Basil I's reign would be the most successful that Eastern Rome in saw the Christianization of the Balkans, playing a major role in the South Slavs into the Eastern Orthodox fold. He also fought with hope to eliminate Arab piracy in the Adriatic Sea, being a Muslim stronghold, and establishing suzerainty over the Lombard Principality of Benevento in the process stage for a renaissance of Byzantine power in the Italian peninsula. Since Basil I died in 886, having laid the foundations of a true Eastern Roman resurgence throughout the world and beyond. Unfortunately, the years following emperor's trend from 893 on to the Bulgarian Prince Simeon, who launched war after war and of claiming the imperial title and trying to replace the Roman biggest power in the region. He was never able to take Constantinople itself, but he still greatly borders of the realm at the expense of Byzantine Balkan territory, imposing a tribute to Constantinople and forcing them to confirm him with the prestigious imperial title of Slavonic Bulgarian tongue, Tsar. With Simeon's 927, Eastern Rome's northern frontier with Bulgaria became somewhat stable once more. However, its eastern frontiers against the Arabs remained volatile the entire time. The ever-powerful Caliphate in the empire's Anatolian heartland, and more importantly, Muslim players continued to raid up a devastating raid into the Byzantine-held Aegean Islands based on Crete. 904, an Abbasid fleet commanded by the infamous Greek defector Leo of Tripoli had even managed to sail all to Thessaloniki, which at the time was the second most city in Eastern Rome. After a 3-day siege, the city was put to torn. Emperor Leo IV responded by appointing Mechwarrior Jews pirates. Mechwarrior had some initial success. His Byzantine warships in Arab St. Thomas's Day of 906 and fought its way to the period coast in 909. Mechwarrior then sailed to Cyprus, which was remarkably jointly ruled by both the Abbasid Caliphate and the Roman Empire. He kept his troops unopposed and re-established undisputed The Byzantine expedition then resupplied and placing its capital of Kandax under standoff ensued, in which the Romans found against. Upon hearing that Emperor Leo IV had broke off the fruitless siege and began the journey home. The ambush early 912 by his old friend, utterly destroyed, and all the gains he had made in the while an Abbasid fleet led by Damien of brought after a 4-month sacking spree. Having gained an impregnable stronghold from which Muslim with unity from the Bulgarian to the actually upon the Mediterranean Sea. The gains Basil I made to its security Byzantine borders had begun to falter. Balance of thing, and the geopolitical situation would soon tilt back in the Caliphate, which had long been Eastern Rome's greatest rival, losing their central authority since the late 800s, while they retained their provinces were slowly gaining more and more autonomy. While most of these Muslim states paid lip service to the Caliph in Baghdad, mid-10th world was nevertheless more fractured than it had ever been. Political rotation. The turning of the tides of Kourkous, a brilliant Armenian general who fought under the service of the 5th Macedonian Romanov. Kourkous's martial prowess saw Roman armies push the Armenia and conquer the Emirate of Melitene, which for a thought side. The capture of Melitene sent a shockwave throughout the history. A major Muslim city had fallen and reincorporated to Byzantine, with the powerless central Abbasid authority able to do little about it. Louis' movements saw him keep the burgeoning Hamdanid dynasty bay in many cities in Upper Mesopotamia and sacred. In 941, he even fended off a large-scale raid along the Black Sea, led by Prince Igor of the Kievan Rus. However, in true Byzantine fashion, was not for his victories, but punished for his rising popularity by seeming imperial. Dismissed from service in 944, and soon after faded from the pages of history. With the end of Kourkous's story, we begin the Byzantium's next great conqueror, the one called the Pale Death of the Saracens. In 912, son was born in the Cappadocian noble family of Phocas and given the name Nikephoros, which means bringer. Phocas clan had long served as a Byzantine. At a young age, Nikephoros sought to continue this family. The favor of Emperor Constantine VII, and by 944 been appointed military governor of the theme of Anatolikon. 10 years later, he domestic schools, and in 957 proved himself worthy of the position, seizing the fortress town of Hadath from the Hamadanids. 959 saw the Manos to the Roman throne, who preferred indulging his base pleasures over engaging in military matters to his capable generals. To that end, he put Nick in charge of Byzantium's eastern armies and commanded him to accomplish what so many other Roman generals failed to do for him. It was time to finally retake Crete. So Nikephoros set his eyes on the Isle of Minos and began to prepare for the battle that would make or break his career. It was an opportune time to strike, for the Arab were vulnerable. With the decline of the Abbasid Caliphate, they had lost their most The nearby Hamdanids could not offer any support either. Nevertheless, the defeat would not be easy pickings. Its areas were on land and sea, and its main fortress of Kandax was impregnable. According to the contemporary chronicler Leo the Deacon, it was protected on one side and on by tall battlements of earth and goat and pig hair mixed together, pressed thoroughly, wide enough that 2 wagons could easily make a circuit on top of the rampart, pass each other. Opposing walls were supplemented by 2 outspread and thoroughly impassable. Boros had a tough fight ahead of him. In early 960, the invasion armada began to assemble at a port south of Ephesus. A truly gigantic mass of soldiery. Total estimates range between around 30,000 to 50,000 men. The kings of Europe could barely muster armies more than a few thousand. Present among this force were not just thematic soldiers of Armenian, Greek, and other options, but also a contingent of Norse axe-wielders from Scandinavia. They were transported down the Aegean aboard a fleet of 100 drum-on warships, 200 308 supply vessels. Invasion landfall on northern Crete on July 13, 960. Good. Of the 3 medieval chroniclers who give us accounts of the conquest of Crete, claim that Leo the Deacon, however, asserts that Nicephorus' soldiery were confronted on the shore by a large of Cretan Muslims. Undaunted, Phocas ordered his army to form up into 3 and likely with his heavy cataphract cavalry. The Arab line had heavy casualties and safe the walls of Kandax, where Amir Abd al-Aziz ibn Shu'ayb had prepared to make defense. Following this initial victory, Nicephorus marched to. According to Leo the Deacon, the Cappadocian general attempted was handily repulsed by the Arab invaders. For this, he around and built a fortified stockade around its walls.